Well, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for today's CSR webinar, which we're calling Impact That Moves and How Business Leaders Can Drive Purpose in the Year Ahead, 2026. Can you believe it already? As business leaders, many of us are navigating a season of change with expectations constantly shifting, with employees, customers, different stakeholders to consider in various different communities. It could be local in the United States or abroad, depending on your business model. And we're looking at not only what businesses have to produce, but how they can give back and demonstrate their impact to their stakeholders. And that's why we have two important people here with us today to give us some information about how they do that. At the same time, while leaders are being asked to do more and more and more with less, that might be challenging. How do you, with less resources, give back with intention? How do you use the resources at your disposal to be authentic and to show your influence, and how that can be deployed with your stakeholders? So today's conversation is about practical, scalable solutions that we feel business leaders can learn to make a scalable, meaningful impact within their communities. So those can be through personal leadership, relationships, corporate resources, and also creative things that can be imparted on the partnerships you've had with nonprofits. So rather than talking about it in theory, we want to share some concrete examples to inspire other business leaders, and we hope that this will multiply and be tangential in the impact that's made abroad.
Good. Okay.
So now I'm going to introduce some very important people. I think we still have some people dialing in here that are going to be part of this conversation. The first is my colleague, Georgia Close, who is our Director of Development at Free Wheelchair Mission.
Hi.
Georgia.
Hi, everybody. Okay.
And then, Georgia, would you like to introduce our other speakers?
Yes. Thank you, Nuka. Welcome, everybody. We're so glad that you're joining us from wherever it is that you're coming from. Before we jump into questions, I want to introduce you to these two and then share a little bit about Free Wheelchair Mission and who we are, why we feel like this is a really valuable topic for 2026. First, I will introduce you, Scott. Scott Davis is a wonderful gentleman we've come to know over the years. You're going to learn a lot about him, so I'll save the goodies for later. But he works for Capital Group. So he's going to be speaking to his engagement as well as the companies. And then Priscilla Noble, who you see on your screen there, she works for Adobe. So she's going to be sharing the same, her experience as a giver to Free Wheelchair Mission, a supporter herself, and then how the company engages. So just to kick us off at Free Wheelchair Mission, so you know a little bit about us, our purpose is really simple, but very much profound. So what we do is provide life-changing mobility to individuals all around the globe who live in some of the world's most under-resourced communities. And if you've ever had your own experience after a surgery or an injury or some short-term disability and needed a wheelchair or a mobility device, you know this very, very well. But in the developing parts of our world, without mobility and without a wheelchair, that could really determine, can I go to school? Can I have a job? Can I really fully participate in my community and fully participate in my life? So we believe that that is of utmost importance to restore mobility to people so that they can truly have those opportunities in some of these areas where we're working. And since our founding, which in April is going to be our 25th anniversary, we've worked in 95 countries and given away 1.5 million wheelchairs to individuals and their families who have needed that. So how is this work possible? Because 1.5 is a big number. We do this work through partnerships, through business leaders, entrepreneurs like yourselves, and through companies and individuals who hold that same belief. So we feel like this is a really, really important topic to be sharing on today because it's people who believe that impact is really scalable and should be deeply human and practical that really motivates our work. So today's conversation is really aligned with that belief, and I'm excited to explore how impact can really help a nonprofit like us move forward in our mission and our work. So I will jump right in with you, Priscilla. Can you share a little bit of your background and your role at Adobe and how you got introduced to Free Wheelchair Mission?
Yep. Hi, thanks for having me today. So I'm Priscilla. I'm an MK. Actually, I was born and raised in Japan. And my parents taught us at a very young age to give back and to tithe and figure out what to do with our money, even when we were given 10 yen for our allowance back in the day. So that has carried with me throughout. And as you can imagine, being an MK, I have a lot of friends who went back into the mission field and even my brother. So I was supporting them. And I've always tried to figure out where to put my money, and annually I sort of do a rebalance. I was giving quite a bit of money to an organization that ended up going down or going out. And I had extra money to give that year. And very good friends of mine who I've known for 30 some years, Ron Johnson is the head of sort of the Free Wheelchair Mission up here in the Seattle area. And I had gone prior to that and given a little bit, but that year I had quite a lot to give. And what Free Wheelchair Mission does, I just think is amazing. When you think of Jesus in the Bible, he rarely met with somebody that he didn't solve a physical problem or something that was most important to them, along with giving him a message. And I think that sort of having, there's the message and there's message with a touch, and having that touch is really important. That's what can stick with people, even if they've never met Jesus or heard about him, they're going to remember that for the rest of their lives. So that was really important for me. So that's how I got involved with Free Wheelchair Mission. In my day-to-day, I am senior director at Adobe in charge of international strategy and product management for all of our um, language versions around the world. As you can imagine, I'm fluent in Japanese. That's how it all started. And so I fly around the world regularly. Yeah, part of an organization that allows me to also give back.
Thank you. Thank you, Priscilla. Okay, Scott, turning to you, can you share a bit about your background, your role at Capital Group, and how you connected with us?
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. My background at Capital, I've been here nearly 18 years, so majority of my professional career. And Capital Group, for those who don't know, Capital, one of the world's largest asset managers. We manage about $3.5 trillion for millions of people in their 401k, pension plan, individual accounts. And so very much a position of privilege and trust. And I think that's something that comes through in some of our nonprofit endeavors as well. But my job at Capital, my role is leading two of our businesses, our exchange traded fund or ETF business and our separately managed account business. So both of which cater to US investors or some around the globe, particularly those who are high net worth or concerned with taxes. And so, in my day-to-day job, I get to come learn about and interact with folks who have been quite successful and oftentimes are thinking about their legacies and what they're going to do beyond just accumulating and spending their own wealth. I was lucky to be introduced to Free Wheelchair Mission about a decade ago when the then director of the department in which I worked, he gave me a Christmas card with a free wheelchair on it. And I didn't quite understand it. I said, so where do I exchange this for the wheelchair? How does this work? But I came to understand that this was a donation, and I got to be able to direct that donation. And what caught my eye is I had spent a year in Ecuador after college, serving in the mission field and working with local youth. And I remember seeing people on the ground. I remember seeing people who would be on their front porch all day. I'd go out, I'd come back, they'd be in the same spot. And the power of mobility and the ability to get around was something I'm sure they only dreamed about. But David Hummelberg, who's the department director and our now chairman of the board at Free Wheelchair, was the one who introduced me to it. And David and I found we had a lot in common as it related to this mission and our own experiences. And it was a great way to get involved.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you for doing that. Thank you for saying yes. Okay, Priscilla, so your support of Free Wheelchair Mission is really three things. You give personally, you do the employer match, so Adobe matches your support of us, and you also do in-kind giving. Um, can you just explain a little bit about those three things, more so the in-kind, but what really, more than anything, what really prompted you to deepen your engagement over time with us?
As I said earlier, I had, some money that I always give to some sort of ministry that I had. And so the beginning in that year, because it was toward the end of the year,
Mhm.
I thought, let me just go ahead and funnel that this year into that. And it is, partially, of course, because I believe in giving, but partially also that tax break that you get is no small thing either, and is helpful. And so I did that with my money in terms of giving a gift, and there are, sort of the double matching that Adobe does that I think, we'll talk about in a little bit, but there was the ability for me to do that. The in-kind giving is something I've always done. Software companies in particular typically allow their employees to give. They get a certain amount, a limited amount, a quantity of software that they can purchase every year, and typically it's for yourself or your friends or to donate. And you get to buy it at a discount. And in our case, we have subscriptions, annual subscriptions. So I get to buy a certain number of those a year. And so I have to decide how I'm going to give those out. I usually keep about two or three for me and my family and friends, and then the rest I divide among all the various groups that I donate to. Um, I've always, because I'm very international, I've donated around the world. And just a note for people that do that, you don't get tax breaks on what you
Mm.
donate outside of the US unless they have an entity within the US that you can find. But I typically choose to donate anyway. Um, and that's just part of my thing. But the in kind is amazing when you think about it, because companies, all these nonprofits, these small companies, these small ministries, they need everything. So even if you work at Costco, they probably need office supplies. It's always thinking about what they need. For me, because I work on the side of our business, the digital media group that has the Photoshop and Illustrator and InDesign and Acrobat and all of that, that is something that I know is incredibly helpful to people. And I know how expensive it is. And so for me to be able to do that and basically not have to have them pay thousands of dollars a year for software that they need to use to market and create all of the stuff. I mean, I really believe Colossians 3, where they're like, do everything to the best of your ability. Even as Christian organizations, make the best stuff that you have, make the best videos, make the best inserts and flyers and things out there. And using Adobe software, that can help them to do that. So for me, in kind is really, really big. I think it's just a big boon to people. And then outside of the amount that I am able to give, I also sometimes purchase software outright, which I do for Free Wheelchair Mission as well, because there's a number of licenses that I can't do in giving, but I can purchase on behalf of them. So I think there's a lot to be able to look at within your own company to figure out, is in kind something that, could work.
Thank you. Okay, Scott. So you are also an individual supporter and now serve as the treasurer for our board. You shared what drew you to Free Wheelchair Mission initially, but how did your involvement evolve into a leadership role?
Sure. I mean, it's been a really fun journey, and before I ever even was involved in leadership at Free Wheelchair, Capital had offered a program that I took advantage of years before, which was an 8-month leadership development for nonprofits program. They paid the $3,000 tuition, and anyone at Capital could attend. And I'll tell you, that gave me a little more confidence as I was asked to join the audit committee as one of my first kind of formal relationships with Free Wheelchair Mission. But it was an example of Capital Group investing in things that they felt could help associates feel more comfortable, because I know a lot of people feel inadequately equipped to go be on a board or be on a committee. But the reality is you have to step into it and learn, and if you're able to get some training beforehand, all the better. But that's how I started to advance beyond just a donor or an attendee of a gala. I started to actually purchase and give out some of the Christmas holiday cards as well as a way to just share that message. And I still do that to this day. I find it incredibly powerful to introduce people to the mission. And as I've grown, I did talk with some of the leadership and some of the board, and I found that for me, a next step would be great to join the board. And there was a need for a treasurer. I have a background in finance, so that sort of was a fortuitous match. And I think throughout the entirety of the process, I felt incredibly supported by Capital Group. I've been supported by the other board members. And it came down to somebody that I truly respected in David, having kind of explained and shared with me his experience, but also the experience of being on a board, and seeing that was something that I really wanted to do. And I've now brought my family into it, and they attend the events with me. They save for their own wheelchairs as part of their allowance donations. And it's something that I think has been really additive to both my professional and personal development.
Wonderful. A good mentor. We all need that, no matter what age. Okay, so Priscilla, you shared about the in-kind part of what you do with Adobe and what Adobe does for us. Is there anything else you would add or anything you would say you suggest to business leaders to think differently about in-kind giving and how they could use that for a tool for a nonprofit like us? Anything else you would say about that? How we can think differently about it?
I mean, the one thing I would think is that especially in this current environment, and in America where we live, there's so much time spent on how we give back to the community, how we can do things that are good, how we can help people that are less fortunate. And I think that, if a company is not doing something today, it's a very friendly environment to bring that up with HR or with a group. I'm not in CSR at Adobe. I'm blessed to be in a company that has always, this is my 30th year here, and the company has always been something where they do this. And so we have a whole thing, a season of change, they call it, where they really double down in December and they tell everybody what we've done that year and how much more can you do. So they track volunteer hours. They let you off of work to do volunteer hours, and they track those and you can record them. And they convert those for how much people have done. They do a matching, blessed to have them match $10,000 a year. We do use Benevity, so for those that know, that's a tool that companies can use to track this kind of thing and match. And there's the ability to go in and put, what the group is that you want to donate to. I think some corporations, unfortunately, Adobe included, are pretty careful in not wanting to donate to outwardly religious organizations, which nixes 90% of my giving. But amazingly, Free Wheelchair Mission is allowed in all of that, and I love that, and probably because it is that real physical need that we're meeting. And so that's amazing to me, and it really allows me to give that much more extra. So I think that, if your company doesn't have it, to figure out, do some research, get out there, figure it out, tell your own story, and see if you can get that going. But if you do, just know that Free Wheelchair Mission is one of the ones that you tend to be able to do more for at the end of the day, which I think is pretty great. As Scott said, I became aware of the Christmas cards at one of the galas, and annually I've been giving those out to my team as a gift. And same thing, a lot of them opened it up and they would Slack me and they'd say, "What's this?" And then they'd realize, and they've been looking forward to it. And they send me notes every year with pictures usually of their kids and them going in and choosing which continent and who they're going to help that year. And because I have an international team, I would say probably 80% of the people in my team are from other countries. I have quite a number of Muslims on my team who have mentioned how this has been the favorite thing that they've ever gotten because they believe in giving back. And I always just think, I don't need to do everything. I need to plant seeds. And this is just yet another way to plant a seed. So I just think that that's also just an amazing thing that we can do.
Thank you for that. Those cards really are an amazing way of sharing and getting the word out there. For anyone who supports Free Wheelchair Mission on this webinar, there's an opportunity if you give to take one of those and send it to somebody as a gift. We have year round and Christmas, so and holiday, all of it. So don't forget what Priscilla said, and I love what you said about this being a really friendly environment to take something you really care about and bring it to your HR team and say, hey, what can we do for this organization? Because while it may not be something that's put out there often, there's usually an opportunity that you don't know about. And we always are trying to encourage people to ask that question of their HR team. Okay, so carrying on here, Scott, from a board and leadership perspective, can you speak to how in-kind contributions really complement financial giving and then how it strengthens the nonprofit's really long-term effectiveness?
Sure. And I mean, I think it's obvious, but by opening up to non-cash or in-kind contributions, you really broaden the ability of people to give to you, right? Because not everybody has that, the liquidity or the cash resources to give you, but they have resources in other ways. As a board member and as a treasurer, we're always looking at ratios. We're looking at, the amount of money that we deliver, beyond directly to our mission that's not taken by overhead, not taken by fundraising. And while you account for non-cash gifts appropriately, they can really have a powerful impact on some of those ratios. And everything, as Priscilla said, everything costs something, and quite frankly, everybody has something that they can give. So here's a couple of interesting examples. I mean, I work for a professional services firm. We don't have tangible widgets to give away. We don't have software. But I've watched us. We do have offices in very high rent areas like London, New York, Los Angeles, and we will on occasion open those up to host meetings or events. We'll cover catering, and those are thousands of dollars worth of space that a nonprofit can take advantage of. Assuming you're not a fully virtual company, you might have that as well. There are volunteer hours. I mean, we have 10,000 associates at Capital Group. And one of the ways in which we empower associates to invest in the causes that they feel passionate about is to actually have a Dollars for Doers program. So we will donate on their behalf for every dollar that they volunteer. And so that's a non-cash gift of time from an associate, magnified by a cash gift from Capital. And I think obviously there's firms with consulting and professional services that they could they can give in kind. Like we've seen folks help us on the technical engineering side. We design, while they are designed to be as simple and easy to repair, they're sophisticated medical devices that we deliver to some of the most challenging environments in the world. We have some wonderful partners who are donating their time and expertise to help us design those and ensure that they deliver on their mission. So I think there's a lot of creativity in how you give. Companies can incentivize certain aspects, but it is important that associates know that you're open to that and that you want to strengthen those connections in any way you can.
Perfect. Okay, so Priscilla, you kind of answered this question earlier, and my question to you was going to be what advice would you give employees here today that for starting the conversation about supporting a mission that they really love or a nonprofit they're really interested in. So go to your HR team, ask those questions. Anything else you would add to that? Any other advice?
I think it always helps to have to frame everything you want within a story that somebody can understand. And so often I'm telling my team, like, how do we take the things that you care about or the business and tell a story in such a way that it's not just a flat slide or a flat ask. So doing things with your team. Again, we also have these volunteer hours. And I think this last year in 2025, I was just looking at the final numbers that Adobe put out there. And we have about 36,000 employees now. $17.4 million were donated via the employees and 125,000 volunteer hours. And another 7 million in matching donations. So it's a lot. So, when we talk with our team and we say, hey, team, would we want to go out, even locally, sometimes we'll do street cleans or we'll do something, or somebody will say, I want to go do a soup kitchen. Like we can all go together. And I think those kinds of things where we can show, that the team is doing something, and then have the team be able to say to HR, look what we did on behalf of Adobe. We were wearing the t-shirts, we were doing whatever. So I think that also matters, and allowing individuals to bring up, things that they're interested in. But Free Wheelchair Mission is such a it's an easy way to be able, again, to show that's something that everybody understands. Another girl in my team, her mom is in Iraq and she couldn't go back, and needed a wheelchair the last year and a half of her life. So
Mm.
when I gave her, and I had no idea, but when I gave her that card, she just burst into tears and she said, who knew, right? I think God sets these kinds of things up. So yeah, I think there's also groups within the company. So we do a lot of, I think this must be more trendy because we didn't have it 10 years ago, but now there's sort of the Pacific Islanders Club and the this club and the that club. And there is a disabilities club within Adobe. We have the military club, and it's not just for people with disabilities, it's sort of people that are interested in that. And so my former manager was responsible for that group, and I also had sent him a free wheelchair Christmas card. And he's like, oh, I had no idea, so I haven't, uh, I can only think of the Japanese word. I haven't umaku fit my way into to see if they would be willing to support Free Wheelchair Mission through that club at Adobe. But I think there's, like Scott said, there's like just creative ways that you can get in and look at this. I also find that, I've also often throughout the years taken time to see if somebody in the C-suite would be willing to have coffee. And often, surprisingly, they are. And getting somebody in the C-suite or executive team to listen, I think, is a huge way to get a foot in the door in that way, and see if you can find somebody that's interested in supporting it for the company.
Thank you for that. We have heard, yeah, over the last, or at least myself, I've been at Free Wheelchair Mission 12 years, and I've heard more so in the last 5 years about what you referenced, affinity groups at companies, or ERGs, employee resource groups. And they really are a wonderful place to really press in a little bit. Thank you for that. So, Scott, with Capital Group, they have pillars that really guide their philanthropy. As that framework was getting developed further and further, how did Free Wheelchair Mission become a great point of alignment for you and for Capital Group?
I'd say it fit in three ways. One is, Priscilla mentioned it earlier, but the humanitarian aspect of Free Wheelchair Mission allows it to maybe go where others can't. Because I think similarly, many companies and corporations have some guardrails around faith-based organizations, but when there's a real tangible humanitarian benefit, I think people recognize that your motivations for doing something can be varied, but ultimately, if you're delivering a humanitarian benefit that truly is valuable, that's something that they want to support. Two, with passionate associates, I think it helps to have people who care, and I'll talk a little bit about this later on. But when you care about the things your associates care about, you create connections that are stronger than a paycheck, that are going to last and deliver value over time beyond what can be earned in a more transactional employee-employer relationship. So humanitarian need, passionate associates, and then community. Interesting to hear, Priscilla, how Adobe is organized. I think we use Benevity too. I think we donated 140,000 volunteer hours. I've got our infographic up as well, and it's very similar. And we too have communities, is what we call them. So affinity groups. And I would say in the post-COVID world, through COVID, especially as we went virtual, those communities strengthened tremendously. So I think it's not an accident that 10 years ago they probably weren't as strong. I remember they existed. But we've got, whether it's heritage communities or abilities communities or Christian life communities, each of those has its own sort of cohort of folks, and some of them can be quite large and influential and powerful. And because they are, and because we also have a campus quite near to where Free Wheelchair Mission is housed, I think we always like to be involved in our community, and that doesn't have to be Free Wheelchair Mission does its work around the globe, but we're neighbors, and it allows us to invest in things that our associates are passionate about, either through their community groups or through just simply being in proximity or having heard about it over the years. And I think all of those drove us to continue to leverage all of the levers that Capital has. I mentioned the volunteer hours. We have employee matching. If you serve on a board, Capital will make grants in tens of thousands of dollars to help you and to take down any barriers that might be there from a give-get perspective, so that you can bring your professional expertise to the board. There's obviously donation in kind, tickets, those types of things, but Capital's try to remove all barriers and create incentives for associates to do that. Back to why, because they believe that the ROI as a financial services firm, the ROI of giving $375 million over the last 10 years is far in excess of that in reduced employee turnover, higher associate engagement, and really, ultimately a mission that goes beyond just simply numbers. So it's been fun to watch Free Wheelchair Mission get aligned, find its way in the Capital ecosystem, because there are several organizations that I think have really found a sweet spot to be able to benefit from all that Capital has to offer.
So, follow-up question to that then is, how have not just Free Wheelchair Mission, but I imagine a lot of your partnerships are shared internally with your colleagues and employees that you work with. How does Capital Group do that? How has the partnership that we have been shared with your colleagues?
Certainly. I think on a micro level, it's things like, inviting people to galas. Like personally, I'll try to, for somebody who doesn't know us very well, I like to be able to say, hey, join us and let me buy you a ticket. I have a table. It's very common at Capital to get an email on I don't know, Thursday or Friday or a week ahead of time and say, hey, I've got tickets to this thing. It's an organization I'm passionate about, and if you'd like to join, come be my guest. So that's sort of an informal peer-to-peer. We do have newsletters, we have spotlights. We occasionally have, I'd say, community fairs, nonprofit fairs, where people can share a little bit more about what they're doing. But I think that many companies have to be careful about kind of backing a certain organization. Sometimes you do find things that are really well aligned, and you can really get strong affinity for financial education, for things that are really tied to your corporate mission statement as well. You can do even above and beyond. But for Free Wheelchair Mission, it's been a lot of sharing and mostly kind of, I'd say, department and division stories of how we're involved, and it's been effective.
Wonderful. Thank you. Okay, Priscilla, back to you. Going back to the Adobe's in-kind donation to Free Wheelchair Mission, can you speak a little bit about the internal process that you go through when they're deciding, will they support Free Wheelchair Mission? Will they, provide software and whatnot? And then what kind of impact or results they request from us as an organization to
Yeah,
have those numbers. Like you and Scott were
Yeah.
looking at those dashboards, which is so awesome to have that.
Yeah. It's pretty easy at Adobe. And even before we used the Benevity tool, it was fairly easy. So being a software company probably helps, but we have an internal website that you just go to. And you just type in now the name of the company. So Free Wheelchair Mission, make sure you know where the address is. Sometimes there are multiple things for different companies and it'll easily pop up. And I forget if it's like a green thumbs up or whatever, but it basically says, Scott's maybe looking right now, but it basically says, yep, you're good. You can get full match on this. So, and I had done that years ago. Luckily, nothing's changed. So I go in and put that in. And then for me online, now I don't worry about obviously the tax of in-kind. That doesn't happen through Adobe. That happens through my CPA, who I hand things off to, which I'll explain. But basically for the cash matching, I'll go in and say, I gave X amount. So in that case, I have to have the receipt from Free Wheelchair Mission on the cash that I donated with the date and all that information. So I get that statement from Free Wheelchair. And then when I go up to the website, I say, I gave X amount. I would like the matching, which I know is up to the 10,000, and I put in the name of the company and the dates and the information. Then I attach that statement and then I send it off. And typically within 24 hours, I get an approval, and I believe they pay pretty quickly to the company as well. Within days or weeks, they get that back. So that would be the sort of the cash and matching donation part of it, and that can happen anytime throughout the year that you can do that. So, as long as you have that receipt available. And I try to do it as fast as possible so that Free Wheelchair Mission gets their money as fast as possible. In case of the in-kind, I keep my own spreadsheet at home where I have the number of all the things I can give, all of the people that I give to, the date on which I purchased that annual benefit, and then I try to remember every year and every month to go up and look at it and email those people, but I tell them to please be aware of their own date when that runs out and they need a new subscription. So we try to keep in touch. I will go up through a different internal website and I purchase through employer software purchasing, and I get the receipt from that. That's what I pay for it. So it's my own cash or credit card statement. And that I then send to my CPA, along with I ask the organization or the individual, the missionary, et cetera, from their organization to send me an in-kind letter that states that they received that. And that goes off, and then that would, be something that my CPA deals with. And then I keep track of that internally.
Got it. Okay, so Scott, back to Capital Group. Can you share a little bit how employee engagement and company matching has really amplified Capital Group's support of Free Wheelchair Mission?
Sure. And I'll probably give some case, like we've got a pretty developed giving program, obviously, and recognizing that all shapes and sizes of companies will differ. But here's one tactic that I find really interesting is that when an associate joins Capital Group, they're given $250 in a giving account simply to give away. And we do that as a signal to say that, nonprofits and charitable giving is part of who we are. We want to empower you, and you go give this with very few strings attached. I mean, going to Benevity, is there a green check? Okay, good. And that really, I think, sets the tone. And then that giving account is used for anniversaries. You hit your 5-year, your 10-year, your 15-year. You're given funds that then allow you to go give it to wherever you like. And people tend to value that more than, interestingly enough, there's probably behavioral economics behind this, but a $500 gift to something that you care about, that you can't keep and go pay bills with, has a different value to you than simply another $500, which would get taxed and then, of course, is less. So there's an interesting benefit of priming the giving pump, if you will, and then using it in the future to encourage associates to take on that mentality. Capital, for Free Wheelchair, I mean, I take advantage of all of the tools we have, from matching to grants, and so that's really powerful. And we've come up with ways that if multiple associates are involved, we can amplify our giving. If there's more than one of us on the board or on a committee or anything of that nature. So those are all tools at our disposal. But I was thinking about this, and we didn't do this for Free Wheelchair, but you could probably think of a way to do this. We want to incorporate it into our day-to-day routines. And we were just having our end-of-year holiday gatherings, and my team is split across the United States, and we all gather here in Los Angeles. Again, not an inexpensive place to gather. And we were talking about and thinking about, well, where did we want to have our holiday dinner, holiday happy hour, what have you? And I mean, it is quite costly to host something at that time of year with minimums. I mean, you're tens of thousands of dollars in. And as we thought, well, let's think differently. We ended up having a bit of a potluck at the office, and instead made a donation to the Los Angeles Regional Food Bank and went down and packed onions and oranges and other food that was going to be delivered in a warehouse together, wearing our blue T-shirts with sweatshirts over it because it's quite cold in a refrigerated warehouse. But it was great. We got to talk to one another. We got to kind of participate in this. This was the second year we've actually done this, and it's just a way to bridge a connection creatively, benefit an organization. And I think we will do this year in, year out. And candidly, Georgia, how do we do this with free wheelchair mission is an interesting challenge. But I think having an office nearby,
Yeah.
having our kind of presence sharing in the same community, we can find a way. But I think companies, large and small, finding ways to connect through causes is something that will continue to differentiate an employee-employer relationship, and hopefully, create an intrinsic value that goes beyond what others have.
Love that. I love that you all did that. I wish I could have been in that refrigerated warehouse too. That sounds wonderful. I'd love to have that experience with my team. Okay, well, as we come to a close here, I have a few questions left, and these are really more focused around culture, leadership, sustainability. So, Priscilla, can you speak a little bit to how you've seen leadership influence whether corporate funds go to a long-term partnership versus maybe a one-time effort?
I since I'm not in the CSR group, I mean, I think all of that is really up to me at the end of the day. The company is behind anything that anybody does that is of a giving nature at the end of the day. So I think that's really something you have to just see with your company. I like some of the things Scott said. In fact, I'm going to take some of these and go to my team. I love the on hire and quarterly idea. So thank you for that idea. I'm going to take that on. But I do think one thing that I did want to mention is, when it comes to timing of giving money, a lot of organizations have benefactors that are able to say double match, just where they say here's a month where we're going to do this. And it used to be with Free Wheelchair Mission that was in October. And the other wonderful thing was the Seattle event that my friends Ron and Peggy host is in October as well. And so I was actually able to give my amount and then triple the amount that was given by figuring out timing and being able to do that. Since then, Free Wheelchair Mission has changed their month of that. So I always now have to decide, do I do that month or do I help the Seattle crew? At the end of the day, I can't triple those anymore in the same way. But I think that's one thing to think about, because I had been asked, a lot, there is a tool that a lot of people use where companies, they say, we'll manage your money for you and you don't have to think about it. But when you do that, and it is easier, it's more, maybe efficient, where you give them the money and they handle getting that money. I'm trying to remember the name of what those are, but they handle those, giving them out to the various ministries. You don't often get to benefit from figuring out when you want to give. And sometimes being able to do that yourself, you can actually take advantage of these kinds of things where people are willing to double and triple the amount. So that's just something I thought I would remind people to be aware of.
It's a great bang for your buck. You're right. Okay, so Scott, you gave a great example about just now about your team doing what they did in with the LA Regional Food Bank. Anything else you would say about that? And how have you seen experiences like that change your team or your leadership?
Yeah, I've got having worked here for a while, I've gotten to look up and see how folks in positions of leadership have responded to some of their associate needs, both in normal times and in times of crisis. So if I split those up, I mean, I have one mantra, which is if somebody on my team shares that they've got a cause and they are courageous enough to ask me if I'll donate or support in some way, the answer is always yes, in some way, shape, or form. Of course, I will. Start with that positive, response and support something they care about. I've seen that in times of crisis, which is, we've had plenty of those over the past 5-10 years. You meet someone in that time of need, and you truly are, living the gospel in that moment and meeting what they need. I mean, Los Angeles, we're a Los Angeles-based company. We had 150 associates lose their homes or be completely displaced by the fires this month last year. And I think every company that has the resources to be able to have a crisis fund to support nonprofits that are helping those in need at that time, you create value that goes beyond anything you could imagine. Because if you help me in my time of need, there's just nothing that compares to that. So I've watched us in those times, and I think it's wise that our kind of corporate giving team has a budget for those types of kind of one-time or crisis events. But similarly, I think for the more enduring, I think about how when we see associates really kind of coming forward with passionate areas, whether it's social, environmental, humanitarian, I try to do everything I can to support them. I mean, I candidly, there's just no reason not to. And even if I can't attend the event, or maybe my financial donation is limited for some reason, I can at least send a note. I can at least encourage. And anytime you can work with an associate on a level that's outside of work, that's solving a challenge together, again, you're demonstrating a willingness of how to invest your time. They're going to carry that forward to their, I've got managers who are managing associates who are managing associates. I want that spirit to go through the entire organization. And, I think that's really probably what servant leadership is about, is demonstrating, go first, be positive, demonstrate what's possible, and, use all the corporate tools in the tool chest that you have available. But ultimately, it's just your willingness to invest alongside them that I think gives people that feeling of, I'm heard, I'm seen, I'm appreciated, and I'm grateful.
Wow. Okay, so final question for both of you. As you're looking ahead in 2026 and looking at the coming year, what mindset shift or maybe strategic consideration should business leaders prioritize, in your opinion, when they're thinking about social impact and giving to an organization? Priscilla, I'll start with you.
Um, I think one of the things Scott just said is so important. Is I often say to my team, I care about the 360, not just what you are doing at work, because we are having to build, a team, and a team has to be something that sticks together kind of through thick and thin. And yes, at work, but you want them to be able to bring themselves, and you want to appreciate them, help them out, if they're having issues at home, whatever that may be. And doing that, I might not be able to vocally say, because of Christ, I'm wanting to do this, but how I show up as a 360 manager and leader of my entire group, and that I care no matter what country they're from, no matter what their belief system is, really matters. And I think that is critical. And that shows up when you do things like the free wheelchair mission, and you invest or you give them a card, etc. So I think, just really encouraging that, just pouring yourself into the people that work for you. There's no small amount of research where it says most people leave their job because of their direct manager, and it's some horrifyingly high number, like 75 or 80%. And I always think I never want to be that manager, that they're leaving because of me. And I tell people, find the sweet spot for you where you feel like it all comes together, and that's where you want to work. And if it's not this team, I'm going to help you find it if it's in this company. And if it's not, I'm going to send you off happily, because we want everybody in the world to work in their sweet spot. And so I think that's just part of leadership. And if we can invest also in the giving and help people constantly think about, is there something that you can do to make somebody else's life brighter and better? Do that. And I think this is one of those organizations that you guys have that it just really is absolutely amazing and absolutely life-changing.
Thank you. Thank you. And Scott, same question to you. What would you say for business leaders to prioritize as they're looking at 2026? Why?
Well, I mean, if you're like us, you're probably finalizing your metrics for the year, your objectives, your OKRs, what have you. I challenge us all to have at least something on there that talks about improving our culture, creating a culture of giving. As I've said, if you go first, if you set the tone as a leader with positive action, you will see associates respond. And that improved engagement and that appreciation for you as a leader and your organization will help you achieve all of those other things on your list. And I want to know what my direct reports care about, what their outside of work passions are. I want them to know what theirs are, their associates are. And just, I think you can lead from example. I have a little wheelchair on my desk and people ask me what that is. And, I can share with them how I'm involved with Free Wheelchair Mission. And that in and of itself demonstrates, what I think is at least an example of what it means to give back and to give something beyond, what you're doing, for the corporation. So that's probably how I would end it.
Wow. Well, thank you both. You've not only opened the door to us, but really opened the door to your companies. And these are big companies. These are household names that, huge part of our population has heard about, and they're difficult to find support from unless there's a torch carrier, so to speak, like you all. And that is one of our big hopes and one of our greatest joys is getting to work with a new organization or somebody who can open a door like that. So it is not a small thing. And thank you both very much. So I am going to pass it back over to Nuka now to close us up and to give some next steps.
Thank you, Georgia, and thank you, Priscilla and Scott, for being our advocates. As Georgia said, it's not always easy to do so, but we appreciate your consistent and thorough explanation of how you support us. And now that all of you have heard how purpose-driven leadership can create real impact in a tangible way, the question becomes, what action will you take next? And we hope that you'll do something right away to help us at Free Wheelchair Mission. The first is we invite you to take out your phones right now and stay connected with us beyond this webinar. And please follow Free Wheelchair Mission on LinkedIn and subscribe to our e-newsletter and visit our website, which is freewheelchairmission.org, or follow us on any of our social media platforms to continue learning about the many, many lives that we're transforming thanks to your generosity and the generosity of others that weren't able to join us today. And beyond that, consider how you could potentially engage your company in supporting Free Wheelchair Mission in the ways that you heard about today from Scott and Priscilla, or share our work with someone you know who owns a company or leads a business. Meaningful impact often begins with a simple introduction. I always tell my team peer-to-peer engagement is what really drives Free Wheelchair Mission. I would love for you to get involved with us in a meaningful way, not just today, but tomorrow and for years to come. So thank you to our panelists for sharing your perspectives, your ideas, your experiences, and the lessons you've learned along the way in your companies. And we thank all of you who participated in today's webinar. If today's discussion sparks some ideas of how you can engage your business, your team, or your own self as a personal leader, we ask you to continue aligning with Free Wheelchair Mission, and we welcome the opportunity to continue this conversation and reach out to us at csr@freewheelchairmission.org. And that way you could explore potential partnership with us throughout this year. We thank you, and we hope you have a blessed 2026.